afternoon, everybody. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, 2024. It is approximately 1 p.m. My name is Christine Burke. I'm a public utility law judge with the Maryland Public Service Commission. We're here today for an evidentiary hearing. It is day 2 for case number 9738, which is captioned the application of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, Inc. for adjustments to its retail rates and charges for electric distribution service and other tariff revisions. Today's hearing is being live streamed on the Public Utility Law Judge YouTube channel, and it looks like it is working today. So we have that. Can I please have the appearances of counsel as well as the witnesses that are present for each party, beginning with the company?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Mark McDougall on behalf of Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. With me today is Ted Duver of the law firm Bracewell, and he also will be representing Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. Thank you.
Good afternoon. For the Office of People's Counsel.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Nicole Zeitner on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel, and I'm joined by Peggy Costello for OPC as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you. For the Department of the Navy.
Bradley Garner for the Department of the Navy alongside Angelina Lee, and we also have Robert Stevens accompanying us today.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And for technical staff?
Thank you, Your Honor. James Greger on behalf of staff. I would also like to enter the appearance of Ruthie Herman and Mike Dean.
Okay. Thank you. According to the witness schedule, I had Mr. Robert Stevens for tomorrow for testimony. Was that correct?
He's just here in attendance. He's not intending to testify today.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I also, before we start with testimony, I believe Cindy Menhorn is present on the witness stand now for the company. Before we get to that, I would just like, as a matter of housekeeping, if we get through witness Menhorn and then witness Cox, I believe is scheduled to testify after that. Is staff witness Bunch available to testify today?
She is, Your Honor, as well as staff witness Alessandro Lee.
Okay.
And if needed, staff witness David Valcaringi.
Okay. I don't know that we'll get that far, but perhaps we will get to witness Bunch or witness Lee. That would be possible.
Understood, Your Honor.
And I did just wanted to clarify, I did send a Zoom link for your virtual request for witness Hoppick. You received that?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, I confirmed receipt with staff witness Hoppick. Thank you.
Great. And there were some bench data request responses that I received from the company. For the record, I am going to ask, is there any objection to those being moved into the record? Have all the parties seen those?
I have, Your Honor. Staff has no objection, but we would ask the company what specific information and bench data request 3's response is confidential.
I had the same question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The one data request response that was confidential was the one that I think it was bench data request 3.
Correct.
That dealt with bonuses for the chief executive officer for the last 5 years. SMECO marked those as confidential because it specified the recipient of the bonus and the amount of the bonuses, and we thought that that was personal to the specific CEO, and therefore they were more confidential. That's the only reasons.
If we redacted the name of the CEO that recipient, would that satisfy the company as far as the confidential information?
That satisfies my concern, Your Honor, yes.
Okay, then is there any objection to that request?
No objection from staff, Your Honor.
No objection from OPC, Your Honor.
Okay. I will just mark the identity of the CEO that received those bonuses for those years, which is on page 2 of bench data request 3-1. We'll redact the names. However, all the other information will be made public.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, and if there's no objection, I'm going to enter into the record as PULJ exhibit number, now I believe, if I'm correct, response to bench data request 1 was marked as and entered as a SMECO exhibit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So bench data request 2-1 will be entered as PULJ exhibit 1. And bench data request 3-1 redacted will be marked and entered into the record as PULJ Exhibit 2. And response to bench data request 4-1 will be marked and entered into the record as PULJ Exhibit 3. All right, that takes care of my preliminary matters. If we could start, go ahead with witness testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, SMECO at this time calls Cynthia A. Menhorn to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm under penalty of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address.
My name is Cynthia A. Menhorn, C-Y-N-T-H-I-A, Menhorn, M-E-N-H-O-R-N. I'm employed by MCR Performance Solutions. My business address is 155 Fingston Road, Suite 155, Deerfield, Illinois, 60015.
Good afternoon, Ms. Menhorn. Could you please state what your employer, state again your employer as well as what position you hold with them?
Sure. I'm employed by MCR Performance Solutions, and I'm the Vice President of our Regulatory Services practice.
Okay. And could you please briefly state what your role is in this proceeding?
Yes, I was hired by SMECO as a client to perform, along with my team, their cost of service study, as well as the rate design for the proposed revenue requirement.
Okay. Ms. Menhorn, do you have before you a document that is entitled Prepared Direct Testimony of Cynthia A. Menhorn?
I do.
And does this document consist of 25 pages and 5 exhibits?
It does.
And do you have any corrections to this testimony?
I have one minor correction on page 13, line 4. The title of it is Rate Schedule SLS. It should be Rate Schedule AL.
And are there any other corrections to your direct testimony?
None.
And does the correction that you made just now to your direct testimony change any of the substance of any of your conclusions?
It does not.
You also have before you a document entitled The Prepared Rebuttal Testimony of Cynthia A. Menhorn, consisting of 16 pages and 0 exhibits.
I do.
And do you have any corrections to this testimony?
I have a correction on page 10. And if you go to lines 12 and 13, on line 12, the 1.52 gets replaced with 3.3
I'm sorry, could you go back, please?
Sure.
What page was that?
It's page 10 of the rebuttal, lines 12 and 13. But the first I started with is line 12.
And you said it was 1.52 was,
Yeah, the 1.52 gets changed to 3.37. And then on line 13, the 1.06 gets changed to 1.24. The negative 1.03 gets changed to a negative 0.06. And the negative 0.19 gets changed to a positive 0.68. The reason for the change is the numbers that had been picked up in the original were from the prior case. So it wasn't changing any calculations in the current case. It was just they had been picked up from the prior case inadvertently.
Now, Ms. Menhorn, if I were to ask you the questions that appear in both your direct testimony as well as your pre-filed rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And are your responses to the question, and is your testimony true and accurate based on your knowledge, information, and belief?
Yes, it is.
And do you adopt your direct and rebuttal testimony as your sworn testimony in this proceeding?
I do.
Your Honor, at this time, SMECO would ask that Ms. Menhorn's direct testimony be marked for identification as SMECO Exhibit 18, and Ms. Menhorn's rebuttal testimony to be marked for identification as SMECO Exhibit 19.
so marked.
At this time, Your Honor, Ms. Menhorn is available for cross-examination.
Office of People's Counsel?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Garner?
Yes, Your Honor, we do have some questions. Ms. Menhorn, are you familiar with SMECO's application for its one of its prior cases? I believe it was 2 cases ago. It'd be case 9456 that was filed on August 1st of 2017.
No, I'm not.
Is it correct that you testified in SMECO's most recent case, case number 9688?
I did.
And in that case, do you agree that you testified in support of use of the minimum distribution system for classifying distribution accounts 364 through 368?
In that case, we supplied both the minimum distribution study as well as the non-minimum distribution study to use as a guide for the rate design.
For the current case, you submitted a cost of service study that did not use MDS, i.e. a non-MDS cost of service study. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it true that you provided a non-MDS cost of service study to comply with the terms of the settlement agreement that was reached in case 9688?
Yes.
Is it also true that SMECO provided a MDS cost of service study in the current case in response to a request from the Department of the Navy?
Yes, we did.
Providing the MDS cost of service study is also consistent with the settlement provisions from the case 9688? Is that correct?
It was, yes.
Do you believe that the MDS cost of service study that SMECO provided to the Department of the Navy is reasonable?
Yes.
Should the Commission decide to approve a classification of distribution costs as both customer and demand related, is it reasonable for the Commission to accept the MDS costs SMECO presented?
If the Commission decides to go with a minimum distribution study, the company will comply with a rate design based on that. And all I can say is, the cost of service studies, whether it's a minimum distribution study or a non-minimum distribution study, are just used as guides for the cost of service study. Or, excuse me, for the rate design.
Have you recommended classifying distribution costs as both customer and demand related in any other cases in which you have testified on utility cost of service studies?
I have. I have another client that we filed, it's called a minimum size study because it's for a gas client. So in that particular rate case, there was a minimum size cost of service study utilized in their rate design.
So I have a couple of exhibits. Some have already been previously marked as Navy's Exhibit 1 and Navy's Exhibit 2. Do you by chance have those in front of you? If not, I
No,
can
I
bring you a
do not.
copy. Okay.
Thank you.
So as I said, those have already been previously marked, the first page being Exhibit 1, which is SMECO's response to staff data request 44-3. The attachment 44-3A was provided to the parties digitally, but these are the summary pages. Do you recognize Exhibit 1?
I do.
And the second page, and I believe the following pages, are Exhibit 2, the SMECO response to staff data request 44-4 and attachment 44-4A. Do you recognize that document as well?
Yes.
Are you the sponsor of these two documents?
No.
I guess I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. Did you assist in the preparation of these responses?
What I did was worked with SMECO to develop the, they worked with getting all of the information in order to develop these different percentages. And Ms. Rory was the one that I worked with to develop these percentages, but we used them because we agreed with her on them. We used them in the minimum distribution version of the cost of service model. So I would say I'm a joint sponsor, maybe with Rory, Ms. Rory.
Are you familiar with the contents enough to be able to attest to whether or not they're true and accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, we'd like to move Navy's Exhibits 1 and 2 into evidence, please.
Your Honor, just for purposes of clarification, she was asked whether she's familiar enough with the contents
Oh.
of the documents.
Sorry, got ahead of myself.
But as of yet, she's not actually stated that they're accurate.
Sustained.
My apologies, I'll take care of that. Ms. Minhorn, if you can review the two documents briefly for me if you haven't already, do they appear to be complete and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes. I reviewed them prior to this because we utilized the data. I just didn't prepare the data specifically, but we vetted the data, and it's reasonable, yes.
Are the documents themselves true and accurate that you have before you to what you recall from your best of your knowledge?
Yes, they are.
Your Honor, I'd like to revisit entering them into evidence.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
All right. They were previously marked for identification, I believe, and they are staff data requests 44-3 will be the Department of the Navy's Exhibit 1, and Exhibit 2 will be the SMECO response to staff data request 44-4.
And Ms. Minhorn, is it correct that you are the witness who provided the response to the Department of the Navy's data request to SMECO for item numbers DAWN 4-1 and 4-2? And I can provide your copy if you'd like.
Yes, please.
I don't know that I have those either. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just let me know when you've had a chance to take a look at them.
Okay.
Ms. Minhorn, do you recognize the two documents I've provided to you?
Yes.
And what are they?
Dawn data request number 4, item number Dawn 4-1 and 4-2.
Your Honor, we'd like to refer to 4-1 as the Navy's Exhibit number 3 for identification purposes, and 4-2 as Navy's Exhibit number 4 for identification purposes.
So marked.
Ms. Minhorn, for Navy's Exhibits number 3 and number 4, do these appear to be true and accurate copies of the documents you're familiar with?
Exhibit 3 seems to be just a reference to the prior two exhibits that we were just talking about, or excuse me, the one exhibit we were just talking about, item number 44. I was correct the first time. The two items, 44-3 and 44-4, because they just reference, the responses of 4-1 just references those two responses.
And let me rephrase the question. Does the document itself, 4-1, appear to be the document of SMECO's response that you're familiar with that was provided to the Department of the Navy?
Yes.
And is the same true of Exhibit number 4 being an accurate representation of SMECO's response to the Department of the Navy for 4-2?
Yes.
And are you familiar with these documents personally?
Yes.
Were you involved in the development at any point or any method of these documents?
I reviewed them.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I'd like to go ahead and move both documents into evidence, Exhibits 3 and 4.
Objection? Yes, I'm sorry.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe there is a sufficient foundation to move this into evidence based on Ms. Menhorn's testimony.
I agree. I'm going to
Sure.
sustain.
Ms. Minhorn, what was your participation in the development of these documents?
I reviewed them as we were reviewing all of the interrogatories back and forth as they were being responded to.
Was there any point where you were consulted in relation to these documents or in the development of these documents in responding to the Department of the Navy's data requests?
Could you restate that? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
Certainly. Did you form any opinions on the basis of these, or were you consulted by SMECO to try and provide information in these response documents, or were you only in a reviewing capacity?
Are you talking about the documents in total or any one specific area?
Just the documents before you, Exhibits 3 and 4, the responses that SMECO provided to the Department of the Navy.
Okay, well, I was consulted in a review capacity.
let me move forward a little bit with this before entering into evidence, and we'll move on. But so, as you may know, SMECO's response, we'll go to the actual substance of exhibit number 3 real quick, see if we can lay a little bit more foundation for you. As you may know, SMECO's response to Dawn Data Request 4-1 Part A refers to SMECO's responses to staff data request number 44, particularly item number 44-3, which has already been marked as Navy's exhibit number 1 and was introduced on the first day. But in your response here in 4-1, SMECO indicates that the complete basis and rationale for SMECO's use of 66% customer to 34% demand classification ratio used in the functionalization and classification of FERC accounts 364 through 368 in its MDS costs is in SMECO's response to staff data request number 44. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's what it says.
Can you explain SMECO's response to staff data request number 44, item number 44-3, and why you believe it provides the basis and rationale for SMECO's use of a 66% customer to 34% demand classification ratio in the functionalization and classification of accounts 364 through 368?
Your Honor, could I ask that the question be reread again?
Certainly.
It was a lengthy question.
So, and I'll try and make it a little bit more straightforward. So, in 4-1, there was a response referencing back to SMECO's data request 44, item 44-3. Specifically, what we're trying to inquire about is there was, we're trying to understand or get an explanation as to the basis and rationale for SMECO's use of a 66% customer to 34% demand classification ratio in the functionalization and classification of accounts 364 through 368.
I don't mean to sound trite in my answer, but it's just the math. If you get the FERC accounts and the nominal costs that are on SMECO's book, and you divide it by or multiply it by the HW index, the weighted index, it's the math. So, I mean, it's the actual values, and the math comports to the 66 and the 59%. So, to me, that's rational.
Okay. So in your response, in SMECO's response to 4-1 Part B, SMECO refers back to staff data request number SMECO's response to staff data request number 44, item 44-4, including 44-4A attachment 1, in explaining why the customer classification ratio has increased relative to the last case and the case prior to that. Is that an accurate description?
Yes, it is.
As with SMECO's response to number 44, item number 44-3, SMECO's response to staff data request number 44, item number 44-4, was also introduced yesterday. Can you explain SMECO's response in that instance and how it explains why the customer classification ratio has increased relative to the last case?
Again, I mean, it's the math. If you take the FERC accounts and the nominal cost and the weighted index, and it's based on 2021 costs versus 2022 costs.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to revisit entering Exhibits 3 and 4 into evidence.
Objection, Your Honor. I don't believe the witness has laid a foundation. She said she served in a reviewing capacity, and she is not a sponsor of these particular data responses.
With respect to Exhibit 3, the responses 44, the responses to Exhibit 3, I'm going to overrule your objection. The attachments 44-3A and 44-4A that are reflected as the responses in that particular data request are already in the record as Exhibit 1 and 2, and I believe that the witness stated that she worked with witness Rory in developing those exhibits. So I will overrule it as to Exhibit 3, and is there any other objection from any other party?
Staff doesn't object, Your Honor.
No objection.
So Exhibit 3 will be entered. As to Exhibit 4, I agree with OPC and will sustain the objection.
Your Honor, at this time, the Department of Navy has no further questions.
Mr. Greger for staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Minhorn.
Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm James Greger with Commission staff, and I have a few questions pertaining to your rebuttal testimony. If you could please turn to page 3. I'm looking at rebuttal table CAM-1 and rebuttal table CAM-2. Now, to clarify, these tables represent the IRRs and just to clarify, when you use the term indexed rates of return, that's synonymous with unitized rates of return, or URRs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So these tables represent the IRRs using staff witness Hoppe's 4-step allocation methodology and SMECO's incremental revenue requirement request of $37.9 million. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm looking at lines 5 and 6 when you state you have several concerns about the revenue allocation methodologies of both staff witness Hoppe and OPC witness Nelson. And specifically, you state staff witness Hoppe's step 3 allocates too much revenue without respect to how it will influence the IRRs. So when you make this statement, is that specifically in regards to the 4-step methodology staff witness Hoppe uses with the incremental revenue requirement request of SMECO, that $37.9 million?
Yes, but it's I was struggling with step 3.
Yes.
But as far as what we did was we imputed his 4-step properties on the $37.9 million that SMECO filed, yes.
So if a lower incremental revenue requirement was used with staff witness Hoppe's 4-step methodology, would that have a corresponding impact on his step 3 allocations as far as the severity of that impact on the IRRs?
It could, but I can't say that for certain because I'm not completely sure of the step 3 process.
Understood. Thank you. Moving on, I'm looking at page 4 and your response to beginning on line 6 going through line 14. So this pertains to the conversation you just had with the Department of the Navy's counsel. Is SMECO's current position to use the non-minimum system methodology to guide rates in this case?
SMECO, as a result of the settlement in the last case, agreed to file the non-minimum distribution cost of service study to use for rate design, to use as a guide for rate design.
Understood. And that was the primary cost of service methodology that was included in SMECO's initial application?
Yes, it was.
Understood. Thank you.
Used for the design of the rates.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah, moving slightly down that page, on page 4 still, your discussion concerning the facilities charges. Looking at lines 18 through 20, in which you state, OPC witness Nelson disagrees with the company's proposal to increase the Schedule R facilities charge by $1 to $10.50, instead proposing to increase the charge by 50 cents, and staff witness Hoppick proposes to limit the increase to only 25 cents. So to clarify, Schedule R is residential, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So that would be the majority of SMECO's ratepayer population. Is that accurate?
majority in terms of number of customers? Or-
Yes. So SMECO is primarily a residential rate class utility, I would suppose. Would that be accurate? That the majority of SMECO's customers are residential ratepayers?
Yes,
Okay. Are you familiar with the principle of gradualism as it's been applied by the Maryland Commission?
yes, I am.
And was the principle of gradualism used to come up with this $1 increase to the facilities charge?
We believe it was, yes.
So I'm turning to page 7 of your rebuttal testimony. Lines 14 through 18, you further discuss the facilities charges. And then 14 through 19, or 14 through 18, you say, since 2015, Baltimore Gas and Electric Schedule R customer charge has been increased 6 times for a total of 33.33%. Pepco Schedule R customer charge has been increased 4 times for a total of 11.23%. SMECO Schedule R facilities charges have not been increased at all since 2015, and the company is proposing only a 10.53% increase in this case, less than either BGE or Pepco received in that time period. Now, to clarify, in that same time period, BGE incrementally increased their customer charge 6 times in order to get to that 33.33%. Is that accurate?
Yes,
And SMECO in that same time period has come in for rate cases 4 times in order to update their customer charge to that 11.23%. Is that accurate?
did you say SMECO or?
I'm sorry, Pepco.
Okay.
Pepco Schedule R customer charge has increased 4 times.
Yes,
Okay. And SMECO has not increased the facilities charges at all since 2015.
that's correct.
And it wants a one-time increase of that 10.53%.
Yes,
Okay. So would you agree that incrementally speaking, the individual BGE or Pepco customer charge increases were smaller than that 10.53%?
mathematically, yes.
Understood. Thank you. Moving on, I'm looking at page 9 of your rebuttal testimony. I'm looking at your statement on lines 15 through 16, where you state further, I disagree that per kilowatt charges are easier to understand and control than demand charges. Do you happen to have staff witness David Hoppick's rebuttal testimony in front of you?
I do not.
Okay, we can get around that. 1 second, please. Oh. I probably don't need that. Thank you, though. Are you familiar with SMECO's tariff language as it pertains to determination of billing demand?
No,
Subject to check, would you agree or believe that the current language in SMECO's tariff states the highest 15-minute integrated kilowatt demand occurring during the billing month, or 50% of the highest 15-minute integrated kilowatt demand occurring in any of the preceding 11 months, whichever is greater, shall be used for billing purposes, except that the billing demand shall not in any case be less than 50% of the maximum kilowatt capacity contracted for.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has already stated that she's not familiar with the language regarding billing demand that is in the tariff. The tariff speaks for itself, and the tariffs have been put into the record, and so I'm not certain that this witness is the appropriate witness to be asked that question.
I'm going to overrule. She did say, I believe that she couldn't answer, she wasn't familiar with the rebuttal testimony of witness Hoppick. So I'm just going to ask you to repeat the question.
And could I also ask if counsel could provide the tariff so that if there are going to be questions regarding the tariff, so that Ms. Menhorn can actually see the language that is being asked about, and that
I'm referencing staff witness Hoppick's rebuttal testimony. If I may approach the witness, I have a copy
Please.
of it.
Thank you.
It begins on line 20 of page 14. And the language I read to you in my previous question was the tariff language that staff witness Hoppick cited in his rebuttal testimony on the lines I just directed you towards.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Now, can you please, when we use the term energy charges, can you please briefly describe that, what that would be?
An energy charge would be a charge based on kilowatt hours and billed as such.
In total. So for the billing period, the just net energy usage.
Yes.
Correct. So, just to clarify your testimony, are you saying that for a customer's perspective, it would be just as easy to determine the demand charge or the aspects of their conduct that would go towards their demand charge as it would be for their energy charges, which would be just the net usage that they're consuming in that period?
Yes, I believe it is as easy to understand.
Would it be as easy to influence?
Yes, because it's basically if you have everything on your house, everything on in your house at one time, it's that peak that your house is using that is your kilowatt requirement. So I think from a customer perspective, I think they would understand that if they had everything on in their house at the same time.
Okay. No, thank you for your response. I think I have one more set of questions in regards to the conversation you have beginning on page 11 concerning the BSA weather normalization. And just to lay the foundation, I'm specifically looking at lines 18 and 19, in which you state, when in response to the question of whether Mr. Hoppick recommends using historic test year weather normalized billing determinants for rider BSA classes, do you agree with that recommendation? And you state no. SMECO's filing and recommendation is to use the actual test year billing determinants for determining the rates to be approved. So I guess just a level set. That's still SMECO's position, is to use the actual billing determinants and not weather normalized billing determinants as recommended by staff witness Hoppick.
Yes, and in the last case that SMECO filed, they did use the actual billing determinants, and in the settlement, the actual billing determinants were used to design the final rates.
Understood. Now, Ms. Minhorn, would you agree that weather normalization adjusts actual consumption for weather and not other factors such as energy efficiency or other variables that would reduce consumption per customer on average?
I mean, weather normalized by definition is usage normalized on behalf of weather, whether there's impacts from energy efficiency or not, that remains to be seen as you gather the kilowatt hours and the usage of the customers.
That's fair. And would you also agree that the goal, whether actual billing determinants or whether normalized is used, is to the extent possible capture usage in the rate effective period, so forward looking?
Typically, yes, but as SMECO has seen in the past several years, there's been and across the country, there's been a downward trend in usage, so that has to be taken into account when you're looking at an actual test year versus a normalized test year.
That's fair. Now, looking at the 2023 test year that SMECO included in its application, in regards to the weather, would you say, based on your opinion, that that was a mild year, weather-wise?
I really don't have the expertise to comment on that.
No, and that's fair. Now, moving forward into the rate effective period, say in 2025, if we were to have a more extreme weather events in the rate effective period, how would that impact the BSA rider if actual billing determinants were used in this case to set rates?
Well, I mean, as I described in my rebuttal testimony back on page 15, the impact of weather and the deferred revenues as it's associated to BSA really comes into play, and the concern is that, the deferred balance just keeps getting higher and higher, so
Okay.
that's a concern.
Understood. A moment, Your Honor. I think that's all I had, but I just want to check my notes to make sure. And I believe I am done. Thank you, Ms. Minhorn.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Can you redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Menhorn, could you please refer to your rebuttal testimony? And specifically, I would like to direct your attention back to page 7, lines 14 through 18. It's the section of your testimony that staff had asked you to take a look at regarding percentage increases by Baltimore Gas and Electric and PEPCO
Yes.
on their facilities charge.
I have it.
Okay, great. Staff had asked you questions regarding gradualism. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And would you agree that for purposes of determining whether or not there is a gradual impact on customers regarding a facilities charge increase, that the proposed increase in the facilities charge should be reduced for billing purposes by the corresponding reduction that would take place on the volumetric side of the rate?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
I did have a couple questions. Back to the actual test year versus the weather normalized billing determinant. How does using the actual test year billing determinants impact monthly revenues?
After rates are finalized, or?
Yes. Yes.
So let me make sure I understand your question. So using the historic test year
Yes.
with the smaller amount of kilowatt hours, how does that impact?
That's monthly revenues.
It would be smaller than it otherwise would be with weather normalized if the weather normalized really came to fruition.
So would using the historic test year make it more likely that SMECO would meet or exceed its revenue targets?
Not the way the progression has been going with a downward trend.
Would using the historic test year result in higher rates to customers?
I'm not sure. When you say higher rates, so the 37, say for example, the 37.9 million, the rates are set based on the lower billing determinants. So the rates themselves would be a little bit higher. So if the billing determinants were higher, the per unit rates would be a little bit lower. So does that answer your question?
Could you elaborate a little bit more?
So, for example, if I have I'm going to make this super simple. Say my revenue requirement is $100, and my billing units are 5. Okay, my rate would be 20 because I'm taking my 100 divided by 5, so my rate would be 20. But if my billing unit was 10, my rate would be 10. So as the billing units go up, the per unit rate would go down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the revenue requirement is going to be spot on, because it's always going to be, it's like any other projection. It's always going to be off a little bit. But part of the reason why the historic test year was used is because of this downward trend, and it really looked like the trend was going to continue going downward. So then SMECO would always be deficient in meeting its revenue requirement as that trend moves down.
With regard to the distribution demand charge to Schedule GSS, in this case, you are recommending a demand charge. In case number 9688, the last rate case, SMECO agreed to eliminate the demand charge for that particular class. Can you explain the change in position?
Yes. We actually proposed a demand charge in the last rate case, but as a part of an overall settlement, we took that out of the case so that we could get the case. That was one of the items that we removed to get the case settled. And in this case, we thought it was best to have a small demand charge, a very small demand charge, to get those customers accustomed to having a demand charge. That's why we started out with the $1.
Okay, I don't have any other questions.
Your Honor, would we be allowed just one question or a couple
Based
of questions on redirect?
Yes.
Ms. Menhorn, you were asked and you testified regarding a downward trend when you were discussing weather normalization. Do you recall that
Yes.
testimony you just gave? Is the implementation of energy efficiency measures something that is impacting or informing that downward trend?
That's partially.
And do you expect, based on your understanding and knowledge of Maryland regulatory policy, that these energy efficiency measures are going to continue to put downward pressure on the revenues?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Honor, I have a follow-up question to that, if I may.
Go ahead.
Ms. Menhorn, when you refer to energy efficiency measures, are you referring to any specific measures that are performed in Maryland?
Not specifically, just in general, energy efficiency.
And are you aware that the Empower program, which is Maryland's statutorily mandated and ratepayer-funded energy efficiency program, has now transitioned to a GHG abatement goal?
I didn't know that it was finalized. I knew it was moving that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Monroe.
Thank you.
The company's next witness, Sony Cox.
Thank you, Your Honor. The company would call at this time Sonia M. Cox to the stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm on the penalty of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you spell your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address?
My first name is Sonia. That's Sonja. Middle initial M. Last name Cox, C-O-X. My business address is 15035 Burnt Store Road in Hughesville, Maryland, and the zip code is 20637.
Your Honor, before Ms. Cox addresses her testimony and gets cross-examined, I realize that I forgot to actually move SMECO Exhibits 18 and 19, the direct and rebuttal testimony of Cynthia A. Menhorn, into the record.
Was there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Those will be marked and entered as her direct will be Exhibit 18, and rebuttal testimony will be SMECO's Exhibit 19 for Cynthia Menhorn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. If we may proceed
Yes,
at this
please
point.
go ahead.
Good morning, Ms. Cox, or good afternoon, Ms. Cox. Could you please state again your full name for the record and your employer and your position?
My full name is Sonia M. Cox. My employer is Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative, and I'm the president and CEO.
Thank you. What are your responsibilities as president and chief executive officer?
My responsibilities as president and CEO are overall business operations of the organization, personnel, financial health, and customer service to our customer members.
What is your role in this proceeding?
My role in this proceeding is to provide overarching support for the application that the cooperative filed for relief. Also, I think I'm the best person as a president and CEO to discuss the relationship between our customer member board of directors and the cooperative and their oversight and also their approval of this application before it was filed.
Ms. Cox, do you have before you a document entitled The Prepared Direct Testimony of Sonia M. Cox, dated May 1, 2024, consisting of 24 pages, an exhibit list, and one exhibit which was filed under mail log number 309428?
I don't have it. I left it in my backpack.
Your Honor, may I approach the
Yes.
witness?
Sorry about that. Yes, I have it now.
Okay. Ms. Cox, was this document prepared by you or under your direction or supervision?
Yes, it was.
Do you have any changes or corrections that you need to make to this document?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions in this document today under oath, would your answers be the same as written?
Yes, they would.
Are your answers true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
It is.
Your Honor, I'd like to have the prepared direct testimony of Sonia M. Cox marked for identification as SMECO Exhibit 20.
So marked.
And at this time, I move that it be entered into the record.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I would ask that the witness lay a foundation for the testimony.
Well, if you want to go ahead,
Oh, well, Ms. Cox, you did testify that this document was prepared by you or under your direct supervision.
Yes,
That is
it was.
correct. Is that?
That is correct.
And if you were to ask those same questions in your pre-filed direct testimony under oath, and your answers would be the same. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you adopt this testimony as your own in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I once again move that the direct testimony of Ms. Cox be admitted as SMECO Exhibit 20.
No objection, Your
okay.
Honor.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. The direct testimony of Sonia Cox we marked and entered into the record as SMECO's Exhibit 20.
Your Honor, if it please, Your Honor, I have a few questions of rejoinder for Ms. Cox.
Yes, please go ahead.
Ms. Cox, on pages 23 through 27 of staff witness Val Carengi's Sir rebuttal testimony, he discussed SMECO's cost of health care, incentive compensation, and benefits. Have you read that portion of Mr. Val Carengi's Sir rebuttal testimony?
Yes, I have.
Do you have any observations or comments pertaining to this portion of his Sir rebuttal testimony and his proposed handling of these costs?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me what they are, please?
Yes. What Mr. Val Carengi fails to do is to recognize that these types of plans and programs are needed in order to attract talent, executive-level talent to the organization. We can't compete on salary with the investor-owned utilities. If you just take a cursory look at what their salary packages are, you would realize that. So we need some other way to attract talent, and these benefit packages are one way to do that. And we've had issues with getting qualified talent in the service territory because of the cost of living and those types of things. And we have had several people turn down job offers because of the benefits and the salary offers. And we've had people leave because they can go to an investor-owned utility, for example, and get a 50% increase on their salary and better benefits. So this is one way that we thought we could have another tool in our toolkit in order to attract talent. And we need that talent. It's not, we have to provide customer service, good customer service. And in order to do so, we have to have talented professional employees.
Ms. Cox, could you, do you believe that attracting and retaining talent, as you describe it, is to the benefit of SMECO's customer members?
Everything we do is for the benefit of our customer members. So yes, I do. If you have lots of turnover, that's very costly. If you can't hire the right people, then you can't run the organization properly. So I do. Everything we do is for our customer members.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. The witness is available for cross-examination, Your Honor.
Office of People's Counsel,
No questions, Your Honor.
Department of the Navy.
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Staff.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a few questions. Good afternoon, Ms.
Good
Cox.
afternoon.
Could you please turn to page 15 of your testimony? I'm looking at lines 9 and 10 where you state, as a result of increased costs stretching across multiple areas of business, the rates approved by the Commission in case number 9688 have proven to be insufficient. Do you see that?
I do.
Now, case number 9688 was SMECO's last base rate case, correct?
That is correct.
And it was originally filed in December of 2022?
Yes.
And just to get the timelines correct, the proposed order of the public utility law judge became final in June of 2023. Is that accurate?
I believe it was June 15th of 2023.
Got it. And that was for an $11.2 million increase to distribution rates?
Correct.
So to clarify and to go back to your statement concerning the insufficiency of the rates approved by the Commission in case number 9688, the cooperative filed the present case less than a year after that $11.2 million rate increase became effective. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, further along in your testimony on page 16, lines 4 through 6, you state for SMECO fiscal year 2023, which is the same time period used for the test year and its application, SMECO had a net operating loss for its electric distribution line of business in the amount of approximately $8.5 million. You see that?
I do.
Now, as president and CEO of the cooperative, you would be generally aware of the financial health of the company, correct?
I'm intimately aware of the financial health. That's part of my job.
Now, as you stated in testimony, SMECO had a net operating loss in calendar year 2023. To your knowledge, did the cooperative have a net operating loss in 2022?
We did not.
To your knowledge, has the cooperative suffered a net operating loss in recent years? Let's
No.
say the past 10 years.
No.
No. To your knowledge, has SMECO ever had a net operating loss for its electric distribution line of business in the history of the cooperative?
Well, I don't know about the history, but in my history there, we have not.
Okay. Thank you. Now I'm looking at page 15 of your testimony, lines 12 through 15.
Okay.
You state that SMECO is now facing significant additional financial pressures as it seeks to implement all of its regulatory obligations, address state policy goals of the state of Maryland, and meet its financial obligation to lenders. Were there any new regulatory obligations, that's new regulations, commission directives, etc., effective during the course of the historic test year 2023 that contributed to the net operating loss in 2023?
Well, there's, the state's moving toward electrification, electric vehicles, all those types of things. We've had to increase the size of transformers at houses and new developments in anticipation of moving to electric vehicles. So electrification in general.
Okay, and that kind of leads into my next question. So can you please describe at a high level some of the state policy goals the cooperative is focused on that have or may drive financial pressure upward on SMECO?
Well, I think the governor signed a law or approved a law that by 2035 you had to have an electric vehicle. Only thing you can buy new in the state would be an electric vehicle. So we have to get prepared for that. And as I said, we're having to step up the transformers to make sure they can handle that type of thing. Just thinking.
Take your time.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm just focused on electrification.
Okay. And now kind of focus that question. So were there any such policy initiatives, that is programs or projects in support of state policy goals, included in the historic test year in this present case?
Well, we're implementing EV charging stations, public EV charging stations as part of the pilot project the state is doing. So we continue to do that in 2023. Can't, off the top of my head, think of a whole lot else in that area. But I mean, we're participating here in a number of work groups that have come out of legislation. So, we're kind of stretched thin doing that. We spend a lot of time up here. The staff does. My staff does.
Understood. But just to be clear, those are all potential future costs to the SMECO, correct? And not costs that it's already occurred, specifically in the 2023.
Well, costs are going to continue to go up. We're going to continue to see that pressure as a result of these new initiatives.
Got it. Going back, were there any new obligations to lenders in the 2023 test year that did not exist in prior years?
the only obligation we had was the increase in our short-term line of credit. That increased drastically in 2023. And as you know, interest rates have probably tripled what we were paying in 2022. So interest rates were really high on the short-term line of credit. We did not have any additional long-term debt issued in 2023.
Thank you. Now, has the cooperative taken any steps beyond the instant rate case to mitigate the possibility of future net operating losses to its distribution line of business, like cost control measures or anything along those lines?
Well, I mean, you know, we're not like an Apple. We can't stop making phones or reduce the number of phones and lay off a bunch of employees. We don't overstaff, we don't overhire. We have the sufficient number of employees that we need to keep the lights on and to provide good customer service to our members and reliable, affordable service. So it's not like we can, you know, do a reduction in force. That is not going to happen. It can't happen, or we won't be able to meet our reliability goals and our customer service goals. We do look at things, you know, on an ongoing basis to see if we can find more efficiencies and be more effective in what we're doing every day. You know, the department heads are always looking for ways to reduce costs. I don't have those details, if you know, not every little detail. So that's why we had Ms. Kennedy on the stand.
Understood. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
I have just a couple quick
Okay.
questions. There was a bench data request that was issued, item 3-1, that's now PULJ Exhibit 2,
Yes.
regarding CEO bonuses.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to make an assumption that you're familiar with the response to that.
Yes, I am.
Okay. With regard to, without getting into any confidential information, with regard to the basis of the amount that's determined for the bonus,
Mm-hmm.
the response included a lot of bullet points as far as duties and obligations
Right.
and things that are evaluated. Is there some sort of calculation or basis for the actual amount? That is, there's a great deal of variation, it seems to be year to year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that based on anything?
Well, what I do at the end of every year, or in October of every year, is I provide to the board of directors, their, you know, customer member board of directors that are elected by our other customer members to represent their interests. So I provide them with a list of the accomplishments that happen throughout the year. And I'm not in the boardroom with them when they decide upon my increase or my bonus. So I don't know how they come up with the numbers themselves. But I give them that data in order for them to make an informed decision.
Was the board aware of the financial condition of the company operating at a loss before making the decision about whether or not to grant a CEO bonus?
Yes, they are always aware of the financial condition of the organization, and our bonuses are not based upon any financial metrics. None of the bonuses are. You know, we don't have like a financial goal. We don't have shareholders that we have to make a return to. You know, we're customer member owned, and as I stated before, you know, we're just trying to retain talent. I get calls, 2 or 3 calls a week for CEO jobs at other places. Not just, you know, I'm just saying that it's really, there's a lot out there, a lot of competition. But the board is always aware of the financial condition of the organization. They get it updated presentation every month. They meet monthly. So they are fully aware, and we discussed the financial condition with them throughout the year as it continued to get to, as we continue to see the downward pressure on our revenues. They were presented this before we filed it, and they approved it, the application. I believe you there were 3 of my board members that were at the public hearing when you were there, along with myself.
I don't have any other questions.
Your Honor, I just have a couple of questions of redirect, if it please Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Ms. Cox, you may recall that Mr. Greger of the Commission staff asked you some questions about long-term debt in 2023.
Yes,
Do you recall that
I
questions?
do.
And you responded that SMECO had no new long-term debt in 2023. Is that correct?
Yes.
Has the state of SMECO's debt service coverage ratio impacted SMECO's ability to raise long-term debt?
Well, it came dangerously close this year at the 1.31. We have in our mortgage indenture, we have a requirement to make at least a 1.25, and 1.31 is really close to that. And given the current situation and the downward pressure on the margins, it would be difficult for us to go out to the debt market at this time with a 1.31. We have a lot of other co-ops that have higher DSC that are out in the market as well, trying to find debt, competing for debt. So it would be hard for us at this point.
Ms. Cox, what would happen to SMECO's debt service coverage ratio if the cooperative refinanced its debt in 2023?
If it refinanced its debt in 2023, are you speaking of the short-term line of credit?
I am.
Okay. It would have made it even worse.
And what would have happened to the debt service coverage ratio if SMECO had done that?
It would have gone down.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I just have one clarifying question based on your question. Mr. McDougall asked you about would it be difficult to get new to long-term debt?
Mm-hmm.
You said it came dangerously close based on the DSC ratio. Has there actually been an attempt to get long-term debt and a denial or refusal?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
And nor do I, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And does that conclude SMECO's witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. SMECO has no more witnesses. Thank you.
Is staff ready to proceed with witness bunch?
We are, Your Honor.
Okay. Great.
Your Honor, staff calls Latangia Bunch to the stand.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly affirm under penalties of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your business address.
Latangia Bunch, Lytangia Bunch, and the business address is 6 St. Paul Street, Baltimore 21202.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Ms. Bunch, could you please state your full name and employer for the record?
Yep, Latangia Bunch, Public Service Commission.
And what position do you hold with the commission?
I'm an engineer.
Thank you. And do you have before you a document titled The Direct Testimony and Exhibits of Latangia Bunch, filed on July 3rd, 2024, comprised of 18 pages of narrative testimony and 3 exhibits.
Yes.
And did you also file a confidential version of your direct testimony?
Yes.
Your Honor, do you have before you a document titled the Surrebuttal Testimony and Exhibits of Latangia Bunch, filed on July 31st, 2024, consisting of 3 narrative pages of testimony?
Yes.
Were these documents prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to make to any of these documents?
Nope, no changes.
If you were asked the same questions contained in these pre-filed testimonies here today, would your answers remain the same?
Yes.
And do you accept these pre-filed testimonies as your testimony here today?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I could have the direct testimony of Latangia Bunch marked as Staff Exhibit 3.
Yes, and the confidential as 3C,
Yes, Your Honor.
so marked.
And if I could get the surrebuttal testimony of Staff Witness Latangia Bunch marked as Staff Exhibit 4.
So marked.
And could I get those moved into the evidentiary record?
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Staff's Exhibit 3 and 3C, which is the direct testimony, both public and confidential versions of Latangia Bunch's testimony, will be marked and entered into the record as Exhibit 3 and 3C. The surrebuttal testimony of Latangia Bunch will be marked and entered into the record as Staff's Exhibit 4.
Thank you, Your Honor. This witness is available for cross-examination.
Your Honor, I only have a couple of questions. Ms. Bunch, your role in this proceeding was to review SMECO's capital spending plan, reliability-related capital spending plan. Is that correct?
Yes, the engineering-related plans, yes.
And as part of that review, did you have an opportunity to look at the costs that SMECO incurred with respect to its reliability spend?
Yes.
And did you look at cost in 2022?
I looked at some.
Okay, and you looked at the costs, obviously, that were included as part of the 2023 test year. Is that correct?
Yes.
And based on that review, isn't it true that SMECO's reliability spend has increased from 2022 to 2023?
I can't give an answer on the overall, whether or not it's increased overall or not.
So you're not aware whether SMECO's spend on reliability-related capital improvements or operation and maintenance expenses have gone up in 2023?
No.
But you did conclude that the level of spend that was experienced during the test year was reasonable. Is that correct?
Well, I concluded that what was spent went along with what was approved for the reliability budget.
And you determined it to be reasonable?
Yes.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
No,
Office of People's Counsel.
No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
No questions, Your Honor.
I'm just going to refer really briefly to your direct testimony. There was a recommendation that SMECO provide engineering testimony in future cases to support the capital investments. Is that still your recommendation?
Yes.
And why?
Well, I think it would be so that we can take a look at everything directly and we're not forced to build a case solely based on data responses.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, just briefly redirect. In regards to the law judge's question concerning providing future engineering testimony. Traditionally, are prudency reviews conducted during rate cases?
Yes.
And the primary method for utilities to put forward their prudency, the projects that they completed in a historic test year, would be through engineering testimony. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it difficult for staff to conduct prudency reviews on capital investments during a test year if engineering testimony is not provided?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, we can bring up Alessandra Lee.
Yes. That would be fine.
Your Honor, we would actually like to object. Unfortunately, we were not prepared to proceed with witness Lee at this time. We did not bring the materials for that cross-examination with us today. We were prepared to take that on tomorrow. But we are, it would be witnesses Lee and Hoppock, but we're willing to proceed with other witnesses if there's no objection.
Your Honor, as I previously stated, Staff Witness Hoppock is only available tomorrow. He has obligations with the Commission today. And
Just to clarify real quick, we were not prepared for Hoppock either. So,
okay.
yeah.
Right, right.
and that would, the only staff witness remaining would be Staff Witness David Valcaringi. And I don't know if we want to start him in the
Right,
afternoon.
I don't think that's one, I think that's one that we need to wait till tomorrow. Well, it's 2:30. So I would like, given that there are 6 witnesses, well, now there would be 5. Maybe if we 5 witnesses scheduled for tomorrow, it would be my intention to go forward today and begin with witness Lee and get through as much as we can. And you can, I'll give you an opportunity to cross tomorrow first thing, and we'll get through as much as possible.
And in that case, Your Honor, staff calls Staff Witness Alessandra Lee to the
Thank
stand.
you.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm under penalty of perjury that the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your first and last name, and give us your address.
My name is Alessandro Lee, spelled Alessendro, and my address is 6 St. Paul Street, 17th floor, Baltimore, Maryland, 21202.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Mr. Lee, please state your full name and employer for the record.
My full name is Alessandro Lee. My employer is the Maryland Public Service Commission,
Thank you. And what position do you hold with the Commission?
regulatory economist.
Thank you. And do you have before you a document titled The Direct Testimony and Exhibits of Alessandro Lee, filed on July 3rd, 2024, comprised of 37 pages of narrative testimony and 1 exhibit?
I do.
And do you have before you a document titled The Rebuttal Testimony and Exhibits of Alessandro Lee, filed on July 19th, 2024, consisting of 22 pages of narrative testimony and 2 exhibits?
I do.
Thank you. And do you have before you a document titled The Rebuttal Testimony and Exhibits of Alessandro Lee, filed on July 31st, 2024, consisting of 19 pages of narrative testimony and 3 exhibits?
I do.
Thank you. And were these documents prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes, they were.
And do you have any changes or corrections to make to any of these documents?
No, I do not.
If you were asked the same questions contained in these pre-filed testimonies here today, would your answers remain the same?
Yes, they would.
And do you accept these pre-filed testimonies as your testimony here today?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Your Honor, if I could have the direct testimony of Alessandro Lee marked as Staff Exhibit 5.
So marked?
And if I could get the rebuttal testimony of Staff witness Alessandro Lee marked as Staff Exhibit 6.
So marked.
And if I could get the surrebuttal testimony of staff witness Alessandro Lee marked as Staff Exhibit 7.
So marked.
And if I could get those moved into the evidentiary record, Your Honor.
Is there any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay. Staff's exhibits 5, 6, and 7, the direct rebuttal and surrebuttal, respectively, of staff witness Alessandro Lee will be marked and entered into the record as staff's exhibits 5, 6, and 7.
Thank you, Your Honor. This witness is available for cross-examination.
No questions from the company, Your Honor.
No questions from OPC, Your Honor.
Oh, well, I was hoping we'd go a little bit further.
Didn't think it was going to come up this quick, but
Yeah.
unfortunately we do have questions, but we're not prepared to proceed today.
Okay, so the Department of the Navy is requesting recess to end today and begin tomorrow.
Yes, Your Honor.
I want everybody to have an opportunity. So with that, we will conclude today's hearing and we'll pick up tomorrow with the cross-examination of witness Lee. And then we will continue with witness Stevens, witness Lako, witness Hopick, and witness Valcarengi, in the hopes that we can finish tomorrow. But if not, I'd ask that the other, well, certainly witness Hopick and Valcarengi, perhaps Friday if we have to, but I don't believe, hopefully tomorrow we will finish. I mean, so. With that, is there anything else that we need to address? And we'll be starting tomorrow at 9 a.m., so we should be able to get through everybody tomorrow. Okay, thank you. We can go off the record.